Hello, everyone. It's Lindsay Landry, and we are here with the Make a Splash Summer Bash series. And today I'm so excited to be having a conversation with one of my dear friends, Jenn Bradshaw Almond. And we are going to be talking all about sacred union and how to really find work, relationship, and life balance. So I'm super, super excited to dive into this conversation today. I know this is an energetic that's been really forward for me and also a lot of my clients. So it feels like this is going to be really powerful. So before we dive in, I just want to do a brief intro of Jenn. So some of you may already know her through my Facebook community and some of the lives that we've done, but she is a guide to sacred wisdom, and she is a host of this Sorcery Show and a Moon Adventure Practitioner and the founder of the School of Sacred Success. She demystifies the mystical world for the modern woman. With her life experience and her extensive skills, she supports women to tap into their intuition, lead from their heart, and create healthy boundaries so that they can be seen and heard in their own brilliance, and they can make a positive impact for others and in the world. So, yes, warm welcome, Jenn.
Oh, thanks, Lindsay. Always a pleasure. And yes, we are deeply connected, and I'm so grateful and excited to be here on this deep dive of a conversation this summer.
Yes. So before we dive in, do you want to maybe just say a little bit about yourself and how you've gotten here for those who may be meeting you for the first time?
Yes, absolutely. It's always an adventure. Everything I look at my life as an adventure, even the lowest moments. So it's definitely an adventure to get here, especially since, I was a child. I was adopted. I pretty much lived in Virginia all my life. I grew up in middle class Virginia and did the whole go to school, have friends, have fun, get a job, get married kind of thing. It was very white picket fence, as I would picture it, and Leave It to Beaver. And then, for many of you that know me, I'm an astrologer and energy healing coach too. And astrology is kind of what I lead with in my business. And so with my Saturn return cycle, I really got my life rocked. And that's where I really started to crack open and awaken and realize that I mattered in life. So I actually had to start taking care of myself physically, emotionally, mentally, and realize how I was being taken advantage of. And so that really, really catapulted me. I from that point, I got into the health and wellness. I really thought I was going to be a nurse after my mother had passed away during my Saturn cycle. And I actually got a job with the military, with the intelligence agency, as a civil servant in the government. And I had a really great, career then. I mean, I'm 42, so I did probably 11 years in the government, like in the real working side by side, uniform and non-uniform, contractor, non-contractor. And it was great. It was actually everything that I ever wanted in my life. I was, like I said, I was adopted. My dad was in the Navy. My mom worked for the Department of Army, and I grew up in Virginia. So I was really, really close to Washington, D.C. So that's all I ever knew. Right. So most of us here in Northern Virginia are tied to government and somehow. But what I realized after my next Saturn cycle, which was just a square, when I lost my grandmother, that life was really too short to be doing something that didn't feel right. So that's when I started following my bliss. And it led me down a path of integrative nutrition and herbs. And this is why we're so connected to each other. Lindsay is like healing our bodies because of the things we actually went through in life. And I just decided to go over the deep end and come into energetics. So it's all like connected. And one thing led to another. I definitely followed my bliss of wanting to learn a variety of things in order to heal my body and really feel good.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sure so many of the ladies listening can resonate with that because yeah, it's like our path really brings us to where we are needing to be. And I don't know if you had ever really told me your whole story. I don't know if I really heard it, but I actually also love it in conjunction to this conversation about the sacred union and the masculine and the feminine and them coming together and us balancing both of these energetics within ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, just before we were talking about this, I didn't realize if this was something that you could really put a label on. Not that I like putting labels or any of us put labels on, but really put it in a box or container in a subject matter. I didn't really know how this was showing up, but what I realized in my story is that so many of us might be seeing like the empowerment, the rise of the feminine, and healing and remembering who we are as women. This was actually something that, we all were familiar with that took place historically back in the 60s, right? That was the free spirit era. And then you fast forward, then here we are doing it again at a much deeper level, healing wounds. However, the next iteration that we have to fold into it is this masculine essence. And it's funny, and the reason I just kind of let in with that was because, my life was all about work. My life was all about doing this path of being married and, doing what I was supposed to do according to my father, according to my ex-husband. And then I broke away from all that through tragedy, out comes your life, and rediscovered who I was and became this very feminine leader in my own community and around people that also are feminine leaders. And now all of a sudden it's like swinging the pendulum right back. But this time, instead of swinging all the way back to the other end, it's like we have to come together, not to repeat the history that happened, and bring the masculine essence along. And this is definitely not a conversation of male versus female, but really at that energetic level of the feminine essence and the masculine essence in all of us.
Totally. Yes. And I, but this about me, but since we met, I think it was January or February, and you did my astrology reading. And I know since that reading, like I have been on this path of really dissolving the false masculine structures that I've had in my business, in my life, in my relationship, just really for myself, right? All these limiting systems and all these limiting structures and these limiting containers that I've put myself in. And I've been dissolving those, and I've been noticing like radical changes in every area of my life as I do that. So as I do it within myself, I'm noticing the changes in my business, but also in my relationship and even with my family, like all of these areas.
Because there's absolutely a direct impact, and this is why I absolutely love astrology. And I know you practice astrology too. It's one of the reasons why we can jam on just the energetics too. I love that you said that you're doing this practice for yourself and changing the container. And I can map everything that you kind of said in quotes of, oh yeah, that makes sense because, hey, Saturn and Pluto are both in Capricorn. Great. And like, I say it like that, but I can see how the energetics of these massive planets that are so far away from us are literally having an impact on our lives from a micro level to a macro level. Mm-hmm. And I love that you are also going through this with the healing of the masculine. Mine was actually triggered, quote the date, it was March 28th of this year. My father-in-law passed, and all of my Saturn cycles all have to do with death. It's just not that I've become numb to it, but I'm like, okay, brace myself. Saturn is coming up. Who's going to die? Not everybody's Saturn cycle is that way. Just so you know. But if you're not used to like, oh my God, what's going to happen? No, it just happens to be mine. It's just mine. But my father-in-law passed on March 28th, and I was really at peace. He was 77, amazing man, intelligent, traveled the world, also military, but a hidden kind of cancer kind of person who took care of everything. But anyways, so I was really at peace at him leaving because he had a really complete life. His passing actually spawned more healing and activation of my relationship with my own father, who passed in 2015, which was not a Saturn cycle. I'm just going to throw that in there. 2015. And, I realized that I could keep holding these grudges or being really angry and disappointed, or I could work through them and see it for what it was and how he was, and not compare my father to my father-in-law. However, just appreciate both situations and then really start to see the masculine, the wounded masculine that my own father, like, I want to say like laid on me or bestowed on me, but taught me because he didn't know any different. Mm-hmm. So I was like, whoa, like not being able to accept help. Like some people think that that's like a female who is sacrificing. I actually think that's a wounded masculine situation within a female. I actually feel that it's a characteristic that we are taught that unless we do it ourselves, we are not valued. But that's a wounded masculine perspective for both males and females. That's why we see men try to push through so much to prove their greatness for a woman, right? They got to prove even more their manhood, even though this woman is very capable. Well, the same is true within a female. I don't need help. I can do this on my own, because if I let you in, then whatever what the wounded masculine means could happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was going to say, can you give some examples of what that might look like? So if someone listening, like they could identify what that wounded masculine might look like in their life or in their relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give you two perspectives, just kind of like, I think we both have very similar people we speak to. I want to give it to 2 points. First is like the healer like you and I. The person who has been on her deep healing journey, who now realizes that, her bank account is draining, but she's so happy because she's doing what she loves, and she repeatedly tells herself that, and yet her business isn't where it needs to be. Like she hasn't put her business in that healing container and claimed it and said, okay, this is what I need to do from a marketing perspective, from a budgeting perspective. So she's really great and she's really happy and she's doing all these great things for people who just kind of fall in her lap that she's manifesting or attracting. But she could be so much more if she actually applied herself in a masculine laser focus and said, okay, I got something here. Like I really have something that people want and or need, and I'm good at it. And therefore I actually need to figure out what else do I need to do to make this legit, like a real business being your masculine container, right? So the reason I say this is I actually had an example of having a conversation with a previous healer who went from seeing 4 to 5 clients a day to seeing 4 to 5 clients a week, and then was wondering why she couldn't pay her bills. So she hadn't taken her business to the next level. So that's like the adverse to taking inspired action, to put yourself in a container and just being like, oh, everything's going to work out just fine. Yes, you and I both know, Lindsay, that everything will work out just fine. And we still have to do things for our business and nurture it for it to flourish. Mm-hmm. And then the flip side, I'll give you a flip side to that too. you know, we see this on social media a lot. You know, make your six figures, come get a $10,000 a month. This is my system. And that has worked for a long time in the service and program and in the industry. We've seen it. We've seen like how big the coaching business is, and that's all true. And there's some people out there that are in those six figures and they are burning the candle at both ends, and they know it, and they can't stop because it's what they're in. They're in that Mars spiral of get done, get done, get her done, get her done, get her done. And what they really, really need is to take a pause, and they probably need to do a few things, but I would say they need to assess from a very quiet, introspective space of what is it that they need to be aligned to so that they can move forward with more ease. And that's feminine. That's actually folding in the feminine. So it's the wounded masculine that's keeping them pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Adrenal fatigue, chronic syndromes, CFS, all of those. And yet the answer to their remedy isn't necessarily do more, it's do less. But how do you do less when you've been doing more your entire life? So that's kind of like the very polar opposites of the wounded masculine. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, totally. And I have identified, I found myself in both of those situations at different points of my life, of my business. And I know for myself, it's like I went from the not having structure, and support was such a big thing for me, even receiving support from coaches or anyone, right? Even my boyfriend. It was like I had to do so much healing work even around support just to where I could let myself have structures in my business, because if I would try to plan content or try to plan a launch or try to do any of those things, it was literally so challenging for me. And then I went to the opposite of that, of like having all of these systems and structures set up, and I was like not feeling good about them at all. Like I didn't want to show up. I didn't even want to do the thing of like I wasn't inspired, right? Like my feminine energy was like going down, like depressed, kind of like, oh, well, I don't really want to post in my Facebook group. I don't want to write content. I don't want to send emails. And I knew how to do it. I had the systems and structures in place, and I didn't want to do it. Totally. So those are, that sent me on another layer of healing these, really the masculine of these false masculine limitations that I had within myself.
It's nice that you said you've been on both sides of those paradigms, and I am as well, guilty of that. And same work needed to be done. And the thing is that, we can get through it, but then our next greatest up level is going to show this to us again, right? Because it's always, I think of it like marriage. And I'll give you another example of the wounded masculine in relationships, since that was part of the topic too, before I do this. But, one of the things that, I just lost my train of thought. It had to do with, being on both sides. It's like marriage. Basically, this union, this energetic union of masculine and feminine energy or essence is like marriage. So even though you get through it and balance it out at some point in your life, say like you're 25, and then you go to 32 and you're faced with similar things, but you've got to shift the union. It's like a lasting marriage or a commitment that you've made to another individual that you're going to have to reassess it. It's not one and done. It's always this constant dance of masculine and feminine. So it's funny. And I love that you actually said that it's helped, these different places in your life that you've noticed, deepened the awareness and started to heal in ways that you thought was the best. You could see it come about. You could see the results in your business and in your relationship. So I really like to go to the relationship part. And so what that might look like from a wounded perspective, I'll give you exactly 2 examples, which I think may be helpful for the listeners too, is let's say you are like one jamming, successful, amazing businesswoman. You've got girlfriends, you've got counterparts, you've got a lot of associates that you jam with, but what you are dying for and what you are really thirsting for is a lasting commitment of partnership, right? Someone that you can ebb and flow with, that knows your deepest, darkest secrets, that can support you, like you were saying, in your business, Lindsay, or in life, or whenever life happens, death, birth, whatever. You got everything great, but that's where you're jonesing. Okay, so that right there is that wounded masculine. If you let up a little in trying to do it all and prove that, I don't know, prove that you're worthy, and not accepting help, or lowering the ego, because sun sign is our ego. So if we're like pushing, and the sun is also ruled by Leo, but it's also like a Mars energy. If we're always in our ego of being accomplished, then we're never able to receive. We're always pushing forward. So in that scenario, of someone who's so super successful, should have everything in her life that she wants, but really she goes home and there's nobody there to hear her. Well, what kind of, what balance, what needs to be brought into your life? Mm-hmm. I've actually witnessed that a lot with some of my clients, that they don't necessarily come to me about business. They're coming to me because they really want a better relationship, because all the relationships they have are either very distant acquaintance, and they just can't keep them. There's something, they think it's something wrong, and there's commitment issues or whatnot. And really, it's some wounded masculine situations going on. So I just wanted to bring that as an example, also of relationship and wounded masculine.
Yeah, totally. And I love that you said, it's like when we start getting these reflections outside of ourselves. So if it is in our relationship, say we're getting the reflection of our partner not supporting us the way that we want, or maybe we need something and then the way they're reacting to our need, or maybe it is that, this used to be my story. It's like when I was launching, then I would get so overwhelmed by like having to launch and do dishes and cook food and like do all the things that I would go into like, a closed off place. But when we're noticing these reflections outside of us, then it's the perfect opportunity to look within and say like, okay, well, where is the piece in me that is creating this? Because it's really easy to like want to put it on, especially in relationships, it's easy to want to put it on the guy. Mm-hmm. And to say, well, like, oh, well, they have some issues that they need to work on. And obviously, we also have those issues within us, because that's why we're attracting the mirror outside of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so I'm curious. So, if people are identifying and they're noticing, maybe there's an imbalance in their business or in their relationship. And often, if there's an imbalance in one of these areas, there is an imbalance in multiple, because energy is everything. Right. In the way we do one thing, we do most things. So where would someone start? Like, what would be the steps or the process?
So, I think your listeners are pretty evolved women and very empowered. Like, they've been on this and we've been on this path for so long. I would say the last time that Uranus was in Libra, which is also ruled by Venus, with the 1960s, the rise of the feminine has happened way before this, these buzzwords of empowerment and embodiment, even though they float around a lot this day and age. So I feel like we have some very aware females that are circling, and yet we've found ourselves in this rut. So like, where to start? And not that it's a rut, but this new evolution. So to starting, I would say, is identify which spectrum you're on, right? Ask yourself, have I been studying and remembering and healing myself as a female? A lot. And if the answer is yes, then chances are, here's the thing that's really going to change history. The most aware person leads in any relationship. So if we're talking about the empowered, embodied woman that's healed and remembered who she is, she's the most aware of any relationship. So the next iteration of this woman, which is many of us who are listening, that means that your next step is twofold. One, it's identifying what parts of that masculine within you may need attention. And number two is what masculine representatives or people in your life can you also lead to soften their edges and nurture them. So instead of the way I've seen and I've experienced the development and self-development has always been, let me do this, let me practice and heal this part of me, and then I'll move forward. What's different about this sacred union is it's not possible to separate them. So you can't say, I'm just going to focus on the masculine and then I'll move over to the feminine, or I'm just going to focus on the feminine side and then I'll move over to the masculine. It is literally doing both at the same time. And that might seem really tiring. However, I promise that if you take a look and ask yourself first, what do I most identify with? Is it a strong masculine essence or feminine essence? And then if it's more than likely the masculine is where the work needs to be done, you still have to be able to maintain your healing, nurturing, embodied, empowered self, as well as showing that empowered, embodied self to your masculine side and the men in the masculine essence in your lives. So that's a really deep concept. That's like the first real big question.
And I just
right?
want to share this like as an example too, like, because I've noticed for me personally, my word for this year is union. So another reason I was like, yes, to this conversation, right? The sacred union. This has been my journey this year. But what I notice for myself is often, so like I'm super flowy, like I mentioned, I can be so flowy and like so in my feminine. And then I also can be super, I don't know if controlling would be the best word, but I can be passionate, right? And I can like to have a plan, and I could like to, I'm very responsible. So I'm going to hold the pieces together. And what I've noticed for myself as I've been working on healing these two pieces is when I'm in my super feminine flowy nature, sometimes what'll happen is the masculine part of me makes it wrong. So like the ways these two parts has been, what my healing process has looked like around these two parts for me personally is noticing these two parts of myself that I make wrong, right? So then I would be super flowy and in my feminine, it would feel really good, right? I'm manifesting some things, or maybe I'm like launching and it's like so easy and effortless and I don't really have a plan, right? And then I go into the pendulum of like making it wrong and feeling like I should have been more structured. I should have been more responsible. I should have done this better. And what's really been a practice for me is like, how can I bring these two parts together? So how can I actually turn my flowy, compassionate nature towards myself, right? And then also turning that part of me that can be super still and solid and supportive. How can I then support my passionate, flowy, intuitive nature, like bringing them actually towards each other? Which is freaking hard, right? It takes so much practice. But I know for me personally, that's been part of my process.
And this is not like you spot on. That makes such sense, and that's so beautiful. And it is such a practice, and it is a very new practice. It's a very conscious practice that I don't feel like even the traditional teachers of like that we've grown up with, maybe from Hay House or whatever, not to pinpoint, but like that have been able to do both simultaneously. And it was just a beautiful way of you saying, this is how it shows up, and it's still messy. It's messy on the feminine side. It's messy on the masculine side. I would share, I'd love to share kind of like what's been transpiring for me in that realm too. So I, I love that you're super flowing. Like that's something that's just not something like I can say I'll just go with it. Just kind of like we initially spoke about, but it's taken a practice to get there. Right. So that was my feminine essence being nurtured all of these years. So now looking at this, I would love to stay in the, fluid astrological energy, reading people's charts and, making flower essences. I could do that all day long. And at the heart of it, it doesn't pay my bills. So what I've noticed, and my word of this year is actually satisfied, soulfully satisfied. So what I've had to ask myself is, okay, do you really need this and want this? And if you need this, then great. So how does this fit into the bigger scheme of what you're creating? So that question shows up when I have an opportunity to buy something or mostly learn like a new, I don't know, like a new energetic modality. Like, I don't know, people keep talking to me about, what is that? It's another human design. And I'm like, oh, it's so cool. Like, how cool would it be to just kind of be able to add that to my repertoire and really see that from an analytical place? And I'm like, I don't need that. Like, I have everything that I can flow with. I can tap in, I can use spirit, I can use my guides. I have that intuition at a really deep remembering, like tarot card high priestess. What I really need to be doing is sharing this and working towards this to help and heal others that are either in the same realm or need to actually fold in more divine feminine essence. So what is it that I really need? And I need to ask that question more is, okay, what structure do I need? Is this a structure that I need? Is that why I'm wanting to escape into the divine feminine and, play in the ethers? Or, do I need to actually be delegating to my team so that I can step into the ethers? So it's really having me be a little bit more structured in where I put all of my resources, my time, my money, my effort, and my attention, especially when it comes to business. And you're right. It's like all of that could be asking for attention at one point in time. So what do you do, right? Where do you go when you're just sitting there with everything pulling on you?
Totally. And I'm curious because I've really been playing with this idea of allowing my feminine to inform my masculine.
Yep.
So like the old way for me was having a masculine structure that then I would fit my feminine energy into, right? And so sometimes that was like fitting myself into a box and then actually making myself smaller than my potential. And so what I've really been playing with is this idea of, okay, well, if I could fully be like, let my feminine come forward, right? Like tap into the feminine, lean back, do whatever I need to do to feel passionate, to feel inspired, and then allow the masculine structure to support that. So then creating my systems and structures, whatever it is, whether it's a launch or whether it's a program or whether it's a plan or whatever the thing is, to support my feminine. What is your I don't know, do you practice anything? Like what
process?
Is your process around
that? I laugh because process, here we are, we're two females talking about process and ebb and flow. See, this is union at its greatest, trying to articulate it for all of you.
It's hard, right? It's hard
to
even put words
it is. And this is why I feel it's such a great conversation that you're holding right now and attention that we're bringing, and it's all new. So yeah, I can absolutely answer that question as far as like, what am I doing to kind of navigate this up-leveling of sacred union in my own life? So it's very similar to what you said. I have to make it really simple, or I will go right to my head. Forget the heart. Like I have Mercury in Capricorn, which means I think like a dude. I'm very masculine oriented. I will get shit done. So I actually have to keep it very simple, not complex. And I ask myself, what would feel good? Like right now, what would feel good? Or what am I meant to do in this moment? And I'll give you an example of how this actually transpired. And just like you were saying, it's kind of like when you go into your flow, and then the masculine will kind of like, your own personal masculine would kind of like keep you down and judge you and say that's wrong or whatever. This is I have something that's very similar. So what will happen is, like, what would feel good? So I have a practice, especially during any water season, anytime the sun or the moon. Mostly the sun is in a water sign. So right now the sun is in a water sign of Cancer. So I will walk medicine wheel, and I can go into that later. But so I will come to my altar and ask what would feel good. Even if I have my day turned out. I have a planner. I love my planner. I have things that I need to get done. But the very first thing I will do in the morning is what would feel good? Where am I guided? Last Friday, I kid you not, it was pouring down rain. And I thought, it's a great day to be writing my sales page. It's a great day for me to be working on content indoors, right? That's what my mind's saying, right? This is great. I can sit down, I can jam some stuff out. It's a great rainy day. Get some tea and coffee will be great. Come to the altar, sit with it, and I get the sign, it's a photography day. And my photography days are typically kind of like my creative inspiration day. And I'm like, it's pouring down rain. Literally standing at the altar, like in my mind, having this conversation with the cards and the candles and everything, like at my altar. And I'm flipping these cards, asking the question, and I'm getting these notices. Nope, today is a photography day. And so I'm like, okay, do I keep my client calls? Yes, keep your client calls. So I'm like, here's an example of me going straight up into my head, not trusting a darn thing that's being laid out in front of me. Mm-hmm. So here's what happened. So I had a photography day. So what I did was I had a sales call. So I went to my favorite coffee shop. On the way, I was just taking random photography. And these are nothing that I use for marketing or anything. It's just really for my own play with lighting, very creative juice kind of thing, like play with lighting, angles, that kind of thing. That's all that's for. So it was definitely playing and creating. So I went to the coffee shop to have my sales call, closed the sale, got a new client. She's amazing. Cannot wait to start working with her. Mm-hmm. Then I was like, okay, I have 2 hours before my group call. What do I do? And it's like, okay, well, if today's photography day, I guess I'm supposed to go, I'd check in with my own heart, and I would actually feel my physical heart, and I would ask questions. Okay, if today's a photography day, I'm done with that call. Do I go to the park? And I would get a yes or no. And I'm trained in muscle testing, but now I just use my own heart as an indicator, left and right side, to give me yes and no. So I'm like, okay, great. I'm off to the park, and it's pouring down rain. No surprise when I get to the park, there's nobody there, right? It's drizzling, it's gray. And I literally hold my group call there while there's a sheltered pavilion. Have my little Wi-Fi traveling MiFi so I can have my group call. Before the group call and after the group call, I'm over in the park with my rain jacket, just playing in the rain like a little girl, snapping pictures with my iPhone and these like different rain droplets, these different flowers, and literally having fun. I had the most amazing day. And then I met this amazing woman who happens to be a very successful designer. And I start jamming and just talking to her, and she is like mesmerized from the feminine perspective of like the power of the intuition and what it means to empower and really feel what feels aligned. Like, what does it mean to feel something that's aligned for your business and then go do it? And we got into that kind of conversation. Never met this woman in my life. She already has a successful business. And she was just like, I never really believed in this woo stuff, this energetic stuff, but I get what you're saying. And she actually just texted me this morning saying, my sister and I are still talking about meeting you. And so the reason I share that with you is if I would have just gone and done what was on my calendar, I would have not experienced life like that at all. I wouldn't have even been out of the house. But just like what you were saying, sometimes it's all about trust. Trusting that you're meant to go do work, or trusting that you're meant to go do a Photoshop photography day in the rain, So you have to really learn to trust yourself. Even if you have a structure in place, what feels good.
I love that so much. I'm all about that. And I've had so many times in my own business where I've asked those questions like, okay, well, what do I need to do? Right. And it's like, go wash the dishes or,
Right.
the lake. And I'm like, what? Really? I don't know. And then it always leads to the next thing. It always leads to the next stepping stone. And so even if it doesn't make logical sense, it might lead to an inspired Facebook post, or it might lead to the next action step that I'm supposed to do. Or maybe while I'm doing it, I receive a text or a message or something from a client. And yeah, I always,
Yep.
it always leads to magic, always.
And it's the marriage of both. You've got to have some sort of structure in place so that you don't wander off and play with the forest diva for the entire day, weeks, or months. And you still need to be able to pause and enjoy and trust yourself that you're on the right path. Give yourself a break and trust that just this moment of pausing isn't going to have anything collapse around you, right? Your structures won't collapse around you, structure being masculine. So this is a very, very new conversation that is not work-life balance. Like, work-life balance is so 1990s, but this day and age, when technology makes it so easy for us to connect anywhere, with anyone across the world, now it's about like really ebbing and flowing, like the sacred union of ebbing and flowing. Ebbing and flowing, I still think, is more of like an intuitive, like, fluid woman, but it's really about that sacred union of knowing when to move forward and when to sit still. Like, really that kind of simplistic type of theory.
So I know we need to start wrapping this up, but I would love if you could maybe just talk a little bit more on that, because I know myself, like, most of June, I've felt May was like such a up month for me. Like, I was so inspired in May and like manifesting my little booty off, like so much goodness flowing in May. And then June, I was like really like tired. Like, I knew that I needed to rest and pull in. And a lot of the people that I've been talking with, a lot of my clients and people in my community, like, they've also been feeling this lull, in June, especially probably
Mm-hmm.
the Gemini new moon.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's anything you want to say about that, or even, I don't know if it's going to shift. I'm assuming probably since we're going to be in Cancer, it's still going to be a lot of nourishment for ourselves.
It is. And yeah, so we will have, you're spot on all the way. You're spot on to all of that, right? So like Taurus, get stuff done, new moon, Gemini, really don't start new things, but clarity more, like, like reevaluating. So Cancer, yes, more nourishing. But for me, I still always I feel that it depends on where you're at, but we'll keep this at a high level. So like Cancer, even though in the height of summer, can be nourishing, but what I would say, it's going to be more community based, right? Because it's about connection. It's about nourishing with others, because it's still a heightened part of summer. This year in general, energetically, just simply talking about it from the element level, we don't have a lot of fire in the air. So it is going to take work for us to create fun and ensure that we find joyful things and playful things to do. And so knowing when to go forward or when to stay still it will depend on your own astrological elemental distribution, is what I would say. However, if you're just going by the season, then what I would say is do things in that's in the summer that's coming up that are nourishing but are fun and playful and creative. So what that means is not necessarily just lounging on a beach. It might for a little while because it is summer, and yet it may be, having a backyard cookout and really having deeper conversations, getting this spirit and passion invoked. What are people wanting to get involved in? Or for me, I know we just did this really, really silly. We got a Groupon and asked another couple who had a 10-year-old son to go to this escape room. So it was all about trying to get out of this room using all these clues. So it was something fun, something out of the ordinary, but it wasn't like overly stimulating, right? We were still communicating and being in community with other people, socializing. So it's going to feel like we don't want to move forward over the next few months. So it will feel like a lot of us want to just stay still. What I'm going to encourage everyone to do is to actually do that and also move your body, find fun activities, be creative with crafts or any way that you can, even if it's just for an hour a week or an hour a day, whatever level feels good, because it's that fire we're gonna need a lot more of, because we're gonna want to drop into the stillness, and it's really our job to rise above that.
I love that. So if in doubt, if you're feeling super sluggish and like you just want to lay on the couch for the whole week, add fun.
Yeah. Call some friends over, make it a slumber party. Yeah. Add fun for sure.
So good. So anything else you're feeling called to share in closing?
In regards to Sacred Union, I think this will go for both you and I, Lindsay, and probably a lot of our listeners, is this is such a different dynamic way of being. So be easy with yourself. You're this much more aware of what's happening and what's shifting and changing and what's being asked of all of us to do in our relationships, in our lives, in our business. So just be easy with yourself and give yourself that nurturing compassion, the feminine essence, while you realize what it is that feels good that you want to move forward with and do, the masculine essence, because this is a whole different paradigm than that silly work-life balance. Like, oh yeah, you can have every other day off, or 4 days you work and 3 days you're off. It is very much this more like the waves that crash up on the shore and then recede. It's like there's always constant movement, but it can also be very soothing. So it's such a new concept.
And be compassionate with others, right? Because it's like,
yes,
you're getting the masculine, like the wounded masculine reflected to you. Sometimes there's this way that we want to like pull in, we want to shut down, we want to go into judgment, right? But it's like, actually, if we can, like I love using the Ho'oponopono prayer. If we can come at it with like compassion, loving them, right? And also loving that part of ourself, because it's always going to be mirroring an aspect of ourselves back to us. Then like that's where the magic, it creates more space for healing that wounded masculine, so we can bring that union together.
Absolutely.
So good. So, if people are wanting to connect with you, how can they do that?
Best way, obviously through social media, is one of the best ways in this fast moving day and age. So my Facebook is Modern Guide to Sacred Wisdom. It's my business page. I do um, a show there that you mentioned on the intro called the Sorcery Show on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. I do a lot of things there other than that. Lots of shifts and changes. So I'm taking back my page. So that's one way you can reach me. Instagram is just my name, Jenn Bradshaw. That's Jen with two N's, 09, and at Jenn Bradshaw 09. And I would say, another way to really simply get started in connecting to the cosmos as we start to marry up the masculine, the feminine that's so empowered and on her healing journey and helping the wounded masculine is start with something that you're already a part of, Lindsay, which is the Moon Adventure Society. And that's simply just going to jennbradshaw.com /Moon Adventure Society, or it's all on those links too. It's all on the business page and the Instagram too. So that's like a really great, easeful way to start to do stuff and get things done, as well as chart your feminine essence to that rhythm. And then, we can always take it further.
So good. And I will drop all those links in the comment below. So in the little description of the episode. And I'm just so grateful.
Yay.
So grateful for you being willing to have this conversation. And anyone listening, if you want to stay in conversation with us, come over to my Facebook community, Soul Inspired Success. Share with us what's moving through you, what's coming forward for you as you're listening, and let's stay in conversation. Also, if you have questions, you can post them there, and Jen's part of that group. So, you can tag her or tag me, and we'll get those questions answered for you. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. This has been so deep, so wonderful, and so magical.
Yes. All right, my loves. Until next time.